My name is Emily. I'm 28 years old. And what I'm about to tell you is not just another breakup story. It's not the kind of story where you cry in silence, delete old photos, or block a number and move on. No. This is the story of how I turned heartbreak into the most ridiculous, clever, and satisfying digital revenge I have ever pulled off in my life. You see, heartbreak has a way of making you feel small. It eats at you. It whispers that you weren't enough. But sometimes, just sometimes, heartbreak gives you a chance to get the last laugh. And oh, trust me, I did. Imagine this. You give your love to a man. You trust him. You let him into your world, into your space, your secrets, even your streaming accounts. You think you're building a life together. Movie nights, binge-watch weekends, those little traditions that make a relationship feel real. And then, one day, you discover the man you thought was yours was never really yours at all. I found out he was cheating on me. And the pain? God, it was sharp. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the lies, the pretending, the stolen moments that I thought were mine, but were never mine at all. But here's the part that made me laugh. Bitter at first, then sweet. Even after all of that, after the truth came out, this man was still sitting comfortably on my Netflix account, logging in, watching shows, enjoying my subscription like nothing had ever happened. And that's when something changed in me. I could have just pressed a button. I could have removed his device, changed the password, kicked him out without a word. That would have been quick, clean, over in seconds. But no, that was too easy, too ordinary. And if he could betray me so casually, why should I give him the courtesy of a simple exit? No, I wanted more. I wanted him to feel it, to see it, to live with it every time he clicked on Netflix. I wanted revenge, not loud, not violent, not cruel, just petty, deliciously petty. The kind of revenge that creeps in quietly, settles into the corners of his daily life, and reminds him of me. Because here's the truth. I wasn't about to just hit remove device. Oh no, I had something better. A slow, petty, perfect punishment. A punishment so simple, yet so smart, that it made sure he would never forget me. And the best part? All it took was Netflix and a sad little monkey. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Because to understand why this revenge meant so much, you need to understand the man and what I thought we had. I met him when I was 25. I remember it so clearly. Not because it was magical, but because it was ordinary, simple. A friend of a friend had invited me out, and there he was. Smiling, joking, easy to talk to. He wasn't the kind of guy who swept me off my feet in 1 second. But he was steady, kind. He listened. And after a while, that felt rare. We started talking. 1 coffee turned into 3. 3 coffees turned into dinners. And before long, we were inseparable. I didn't even realize when it happened, but suddenly he was part of my everyday. He was the good morning text, the call before bed, the +1 to family gatherings. He was just there, and I loved that. For 3 years, we built a rhythm. We had our little routines. Friday nights were for takeout and movies. Sundays were lazy days, full of pancakes, coffee, and laughter. We even shared passwords: Spotify, Hulu, and of course Netflix. It sounds small, but back then, that was intimacy, that was trust. Because when you hand someone your login, you're not just giving them access to a streaming service. You're saying, this is ours. What's mine is yours. I thought he was my forever. Truly, I did. We shared everything. Dinners, trips, even the dumb little inside jokes that no one else would understand. We had our shows, the ones we swore we'd only watch together. If one of us dared to sneak ahead on an episode, that was a crime. That's how serious it was. To me, it wasn't just television. It was us, our story, written in episodes and seasons, playing side by side. But here's the thing about love. It blinds you. It hides the cracks. And oh, the cracks were there. I just didn't want to see them. The late nights at work that didn't make sense. the sudden urgent calls that pulled him away. The way his phone seemed to live face down on the table, always buzzing, never explained. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself, that's what trust is, right? Believing in the person you love even when things don't add up. I kept ignoring the signs, again and again, because I wanted so badly to believe he was mine. But the truth has a way of finding you. And when it did, it hit me like a truck. One night I was scrolling through my phone, half asleep, half bored. A notification popped up. A name I didn't recognize. A message that made my stomach twist. It wasn't meant for me, but it was there. Clear as day, flirty, shameless. Words you don't send to a friend, words that cut like a knife because they were his words, and they weren't for me. My heart sank. I read it once, twice, 10 times. My hands shook. I wanted to believe I was wrong, that there was some explanation, but deep down, I knew. Everything clicked. The late nights, the hidden smiles, the sudden distance. He wasn't just mine, he had someone else. That night, I sat in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling like my whole world had collapsed. The man I thought was my forever was nothing but a stranger in my bed. And the worst part? He looked me in the eyes every day, said he loved me, and still carried on with her. Lies. All of it. And yet, even then, even in that moment of heartbreak, I had no idea that the simplest, silliest thing we shared, our Netflix account, would become the weapon I never knew I needed. That was where the revenge began. Betrayal is a strange thing. People think it's just one moment. You find out, you break down, and that's it. But it's not like that. Betrayal doesn't arrive all at once, like a lightning strike. No. It seeps in, like poison, spreading through your body little by little. The first drop is shock. The kind that freezes your chest, makes your heart skip, and leaves you staring at a screen like you've forgotten how to breathe. That's what happened to me when I saw those messages. My hands trembled, my lips went dry, and I read the words over and over, praying my eyes were wrong, but they weren't. It was him, his name, his words, and they weren't for me. I sat there in bed, phone glowing in the dark, feeling like the walls around me were closing in. I should have screamed. I should have cried. But nothing came out. Only silence. And silence can be louder than any scream you'll ever hear. And in that silence, the memories started rushing back. His face when he told me he loved me. His hand brushing mine across the dinner table. The way he laughed at our inside jokes. And suddenly, every single one of those memories twisted into a question. Was it ever real? Or was I just a fool, holding on to a fantasy while he was busy giving himself to someone else? The pain wasn't just in my chest, it was everywhere. My skin burned, my stomach churned. I felt humiliated, small, and exposed. Because betrayal isn't just heartbreak. It's humiliation, it's shame. It's the voice in your head that whispers, "How long? How long has this been happening?" How many times did I sit across from him smiling while he lied through his teeth? How many people knew before me? Did she laugh at me? Did his friends cover for him? Did everyone see it, except me? That thought, that humiliation, it cut deeper than the cheating itself. Because suddenly I wasn't just a woman in love. I was the joke, the fool who trusted too much. And that's when the anger came. Hot, sharp, unrelenting anger. The kind that makes your fists clench, your jaw tighten, and your eyes sting. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. I wanted to scream his name, demand he explain, demand he admit it. But deep down, I already knew how that would go. Men like him don't confess. They don't say, "Yes, I hurt you, I betrayed you." No, they twist it. They lie harder. They flip the story until somehow you're the crazy one. And I was done being crazy for him. That night, I didn't sleep. I tossed and turned, replaying every moment in my mind. The late nights that didn't make sense. the sudden, urgent calls that always came when we were together. The way his phone lit up, and he'd tilt it away, pretending it was nothing. All the signs were there. They had been there all along, but love had covered them like a blanket. And betrayal? Betrayal ripped the blanket off and left me shivering in the cold. By 2 in the morning, my body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't stop. I needed a distraction. I needed something to take me away, even for a little while. So I reached for my laptop. I thought, just watch a movie, Emily. Put on a show. Forget him, forget her, forget everything for one night. I opened Netflix. And there it was, his profile, sitting there bright and smug, smiling at me through the screen. His name, his little avatar, still there, still active, still watching. Can you imagine? You find out the man you love has been lying to you, breaking you, betraying you, and then you see him still lounging on your Netflix account. Watching shows you once promised to watch together, eating popcorn in another woman's bed, using your subscription. The audacity, the disrespect. It made my blood boil in ways I cannot even explain. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. Because it wasn't just about the shows. It wasn't about Netflix being $10, $15 a month. No, it was about what it meant. Symbolism. This man had taken everything, my trust, my peace, my dreams of forever, and now he was still taking more. He was still feeding off me. Still getting comfort from something that belonged to me, and it wasn't right. I stared at that little happy avatar and I thought, wow, he really thinks he won, doesn't he? He thinks he can cheat, walk away, and still keep my Netflix on top of it. He thinks he can take my love, my dignity, and my streaming service too. No, not this time. Not anymore. That was the moment everything changed. That was when I stopped being the girl who cried in silence and started being the woman who would get the last laugh. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it yet, but I knew one thing. Removing his device would be too easy, too clean, too forgettable. He'd shrug, roll over, maybe even laugh about it with her. No, I wanted something slower, something smarter, something that would sting. And as I stared at that profile, the idea began to form. It was small at first, just a whisper in the back of my mind, but the more I thought about it, the more it grew, until finally I was smiling. Actually smiling through my tears at 2 in the morning. Because revenge doesn't always come with fire. It doesn't always come with screaming matches and broken plates. Sometimes revenge is quiet, it's clever, it's simple. Sometimes revenge is just a name change, a toddler lock, and a sad little monkey staring back at you. You know, it's funny, when something like this happens to you, when you find out someone you trusted has betrayed you, people expect you to react in certain ways. Some would say, just block him, get rid of him completely. Some might tell you to confront him, face to face, and demand answers. Others would say, just ignore him, move on, let him go. But here's the thing. I wasn't most people. I wasn't interested in just blocking him or shouting at him, because that wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't make him feel anything. It wouldn't make him realize just how badly he'd screwed up. He'd just apologize. You know, the kind of apology that doesn't mean anything. And then move on like it was just another bump in the road for him. No, that's not how this was going to end. Not for me. Not this time. So, as I sat there, staring at that little profile, that smiling, smug avatar, I realized something. If I was going to get any kind of closure, any kind of satisfaction, it wasn't going to be from a simple password change or an angry confrontation. I needed something that would make him feel it. Every time. Every click. Every time he tried to watch a show. I needed him to remember who had the power, who had the control. Most people would have just changed the password, right? That's the usual way. A quick, easy fix. You log in, change the password, and boom. He's locked out. He has to ask for access, and maybe, just maybe, he'd feel a little awkward when he realized you were the one pulling the strings. But no. I wasn't most people. I didn't want him to just be locked out. I wanted him to feel something every single time he clicked play. I wanted it to sting. I sat there for what felt like hours, just thinking. At first, I thought about the obvious things. Maybe I should just delete his profile. Maybe I could block him, completely wipe him out. But that felt too fast, too final, too clean. It didn't seem like enough, because the truth is, I didn't just want him gone. I wanted him to know. I wanted him to feel the sting of what he'd done to me. And then it hit me. It was so simple, so brilliant, so petty. I could almost laugh at how perfectly it would work. A slow burn, a little reminder, day after day, that he wasn't just dealing with a breakup. He was dealing with me. And I was going to make sure that every time he opened Netflix, every time he logged in, he'd be reminded of exactly who had the last laugh. So, the first step, changing his profile name to Cheater. Simple, right? But effective. Every time he went to click on his little avatar, he'd be greeted by that word. Every single time. Cheater. It was like a little slap in the face, each time he thought he could just slide back into my life, pretending nothing had happened. But I wasn't done. Oh no, I wasn't about to let it end there. Changing the name wasn't enough. It needed to be more. It needed to be something that would make him realize he wasn't just locked out. He was outsmarted, outwitted. So, I decided to go a step further. I remembered the toddler settings. You know, those parental controls that limit the content a child can watch. Yeah, I thought to myself, why not? He wouldn't just get locked out of his shows. No, I was going to restrict him to nothing but cartoons and kids' movies. Every time he tried to watch something even remotely adult, boom, a wall, toddler mode, blocks all of his favorite shows, all the things he used to enjoy. And what did he get in return? Nothing but a parade of children's characters and brightly colored cartoons. Can you imagine it? A grown man, lying in bed, trying to watch Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad or whatever show we used to binge, only to be greeted by Elmo or Dora the Explorer? Every click, every attempt to log into his profile, and bam, he's stuck with something that's just not for him. He couldn't escape it. It was beautiful, it was petty, and it was everything I wanted. Then, of course, there was the avatar, the cherry on top. I could have left it as his smiling face, but no, that wouldn't do. I needed something that would make him cringe every time he saw it. So, I changed it to a sad little monkey, you know the kind, the ones with the big sad eyes, looking all confused and helpless. Perfect. A sad little monkey, staring back at him every time he clicked on his profile, reminding him of what he'd lost. And honestly, I couldn't stop smiling as I did it. Here's the thing. I didn't do this because I hated him. I didn't even do it because I wanted him to suffer. Well, maybe just a little bit. I did it because I needed something back. I needed to feel like I had control over something, anything. Because when someone takes so much from you, when they lie, when they cheat, when they break you, sometimes all you want is just a tiny little bit of power to make it right. I think people think of revenge as a big, loud thing. You see it in movies, big scenes, big confrontations. But for me, revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't about shouting or smashing things. It was quiet, subtle, and it was beautifully petty. And so, there it was, the plan. Perfect in its simplicity. I knew the moment I hit save and watched his profile change, that little sad monkey staring back at him, I would feel something. Not joy, not happiness, but satisfaction. Because I knew that every single time he tried to log in, every time he clicked play, he would be reminded of what he lost, of what he did, and that, in the end, was all I really needed. Of course, I could have just blocked him, or told him off, but that wouldn't have given me the satisfaction I craved. This was a slow burn. This would keep going, every single time he tried to use my Netflix account, and that, my friend, was exactly what he deserved. I sat there for a moment, looking at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, just staring at his profile, the one that had betrayed me, the one that was still there, smiling at me, mocking me, taking what wasn't his. It was the final step, The moment where everything I had been planning, everything I had been feeling, was about to come to life. I knew it was time. I could feel my heart beating faster in my chest. I could feel the anticipation building. This was the moment. This was my revenge. And it wasn't just about making him feel bad. It wasn't about punishing him. It was about making him remember who I was, every single time he tried to do something as simple as watch a show. I was going to carve my mark into his Netflix account like a signature he could never erase. I took a deep breath. And then, step by step, I began. It was so simple, but, oh, it felt so good. I clicked into his profile settings, where his name was still showing as it always had. His happy little username, the one he'd been using for years without a care. And there it was, his face, his little profile sitting on my account like it had every right to be there. Well, no more. I clicked into the edit box and slowly, deliberately, I typed it out. Cheater. I hit save. It was a small word, but oh, the power it carried. The satisfaction of seeing it sit there in the profile section, just staring back at me. Every time he logged in, he would be greeted by it. Cheater. That simple, ugly truth. It was like I could already feel the sting of it every time he clicked his profile. And that thought made me smile. Now this was where things got a little more funny, because sure, I could have just locked him out completely, but that felt too easy. I wanted him to still have access, but only to the most humiliating things. So I dove into the settings for the parental controls. I'd never used them before, but I figured this would be the perfect opportunity. I set the controls to toddler mode, full restriction. No access to anything remotely adult. No more action movies. No more thriller series. No more documentaries or dramas. Instead, what did he get? Cartoons, kids' movies, children's television shows that he'd never, in a million years, choose to watch. I imagined him sitting there, remote in hand, trying to get to his usual shows, only to be greeted by a wall of brightly colored animation. His favorite thriller? Gone. His crime dramas? Gone. Instead, he would be staring at Sesame Street, Peppa Pig, and the worst offenders of all, the Wiggles. He'd try to click on something mature, and bam, toddler mode would block him, sending him straight to cartoon chaos. I felt a rush of excitement. My heart was racing. This was going to be hilarious. The thought of him sitting there trying to figure out how to get to his favorite shows, but instead being stuck in a world of childish entertainment. It almost felt like justice. Sweet, petty justice. I could already see it in my mind. Now, this was the real cherry on top. I could have left his avatar as the same old profile picture. But no, that wasn't enough. I wanted something that would make him cringe. Something that would make him feel ridiculous every time he saw it. And that's when I remembered the sad little monkey. You know the one I'm talking about? The cartoon monkey with the big sad eyes, looking like it's been left behind, like it's confused and helpless. Perfect. I could already picture him sitting there staring at his profile, his face on one side, and right next to it, this sad little monkey staring back at him like it was judging him. I smiled to myself as I clicked save. The sad monkey wasn't just an avatar, it was a symbol. A reminder of exactly what he was, a cheater, a liar, a person who thought they could get away with everything without facing any consequences. Well, this was my consequence. This little monkey would stare at him, judging him every single time he logged into Netflix. And that, my friends, was the perfect revenge. Oh, the joy I felt pressing save. It was pure bliss. It was the kind of joy that comes from knowing you've outsmarted someone, knowing that every move you make is a little punch to the gut. I could already picture him sitting there, remote in hand, clicking on his profile. Cheater, staring back at him. The toddler locks restricting him to cartoons. And the sad little monkey, the one that said everything without saying a word. I imagined him there, sitting on his couch, holding that remote, all relaxed, thinking he was about to unwind. Maybe he was expecting to watch The Witcher or Stranger Things. His fingers would slide across the remote, his thumb hitting his profile, but instead of a smooth login, he'd be greeted with that harsh, unrelenting label, cheater. He'd frown, confused, maybe laugh at first, but then he'd try to click on his show, and nothing, just a sea of children's cartoons. He'd try again, he'd get frustrated, he'd scroll. His anger would rise as he realized he couldn't get to the shows he wanted. The harder he tried, the more he'd be stuck with Peppa Pig and Bluey. His frustration would grow as he hit the buttons again and again, unable to break free from the toddler lockdown. And every time he looked at the screen, there it was, that sad little monkey, staring back at him with those big, disappointed eyes. I couldn't stop smiling. Every single time he tried to access his profile, I imagined that moment. I imagined him sitting there, realizing exactly what had happened. That little avatar, the cartoons, the label. He wouldn't be able to avoid it, and that's what made it so perfect. I wasn't just blocking him, I wasn't just changing a password. I was making him feel small. I was making him see, every time he tried to do something so simple as watch a show, that he wasn't in control anymore. I was. You know, after everything was set, after I hit save and saw his profile change, his avatar turned to that sad little monkey, his access restricted to cartoons, I expected something. I expected him to react. Maybe he'd message me, asking what the hell was going on. Maybe his friends would tell me that he was frustrated, complaining about not being able to watch his shows. I half imagined I'd get a text from him, demanding answers, trying to defend himself. But nothing came. Days went by, and I didn't hear a word from him. No texts, no phone calls, no angry messages, just silence. And in some ways, that was even more satisfying than anything I could have heard from him. Because the silence? That meant it was working. That meant he was sitting there in front of his screen, stuck. No escape, no way out. Every time he reached for his remote, there it was. Cheater, staring at him. The toddler mode blocking him from his adult shows. And that sad little monkey, judging him like the world's tiniest courtroom, forever reminding him of who he was, of what he did. And you know what? I never needed to hear him cry about it. Never needed to get a confession or an apology. Because, in that moment, knowing he couldn't escape the reminder was enough. It was enough for me. It was the most poetic justice I could have asked for. There's something powerful in that kind of quiet revenge. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's the kind that eats at you, slowly. Every time he clicked on Netflix, every time he tried to watch something, he'd be reminded of me, of what he did, and he'd be reminded of how, in the end, I had the last laugh. In a way, I didn't just take Netflix back. No, I took my power back. I took back control of something that should have never been taken from me. It wasn't just about Netflix either. It was about me, standing up and saying, "You don't get to walk all over me. You don't get to cheat, use my account, and pretend everything's fine." No, I made sure he couldn't forget who he was. Every time he tried to do something as simple as relax. In the grand scheme of things, it was a small victory. But to me, it was everything. Because that's the thing about revenge. It's not about getting back at someone in the way they deserve. It's not about them hurting, crying, or pleading. It's about reclaiming something that was taken from you. It's about saying, no, you don't get to move on without feeling the consequences. And sometimes, the best revenge is the kind that doesn't need an explanation. The kind that makes you smile quietly to yourself, knowing that every little click, every attempt to watch a show, is a reminder of who won. And to be honest, I didn't need a big reaction. I didn't need him to throw a fit. All I needed was that tiny, everyday reminder. The thought of him sitting there in front of his screen, realizing that every time he logged in, he wasn't in control. Every time he tried to watch his shows, he was going to be met with a wall of cartoons and a label that said, "You messed up." That was enough. I never did hear from him, not directly, at least. But I didn't need to. In my mind, he was sitting there, turning the remote over and over, getting more and more frustrated, wondering what kind of sick joke life had played on him. And that was all I needed to feel. Complete. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words ever could. And sometimes, knowing that your quiet little act of revenge is working, knowing it's slowly eating away at them, is all the closure you'll ever need. You know, in the end, I didn't even care that he was locked out of Netflix. That wasn't the point. The point was that I took back the power he had stolen from me. It wasn't about him being angry or sad. It wasn't about him understanding. It was about me, about making sure I walked away with my head held high, knowing I didn't let him walk all over me. I didn't just let him leave with no consequences. I made him feel it, quietly, subtly, but he felt it. I don't know if he ever figured it out or if he ever had the courage to ask me about it, but deep down, I knew. I knew I had won, and sometimes that's all you really need. Looking back on it now, I can't help but laugh. I spent so many nights drowning in tears, wondering how I'd ever get over the betrayal, how I'd ever move on. But here's the thing about revenge. Sometimes it doesn't have to be loud or dramatic or even in your face. Sometimes it's the smallest things that hit the hardest. It wasn't the big confrontation I wanted. It wasn't the angry, tearful breakdown I had imagined in the beginning. It was something much quieter. It was the look on his face every time he tried to log into Netflix, and instead of his usual shows, he was stuck with cartoons and a little sad monkey staring back at him. And that, my friends, was all I really needed. Because in the end, revenge isn't about hurting someone. It's about taking back what's yours, your dignity, your power. It's about reminding yourself that you're stronger than they think, and that sometimes the sweetest form of justice doesn't need to be loud. It's the quiet moments that leave the biggest mark. You know, if I'm being honest, the best part of this whole thing wasn't even the revenge. It was the peace that came with knowing I didn't let him off easy. He didn't get to walk away from this unscathed. But I didn't have to fight him to make that happen. All I needed was a little creativity, a bit of pettiness, and a whole lot of control. So, what's the lesson here? Simple. Sometimes revenge doesn't have to be loud or violent. Sometimes it's as simple as a sad monkey staring back at you from Netflix. Because in the end, I didn't just take Netflix back. I took my power back. And that, my friends, was the sweetest revenge of all. You know, for the longest time, I didn't think I'd ever get over being cheated on. It felt like the kind of wound that would never heal, a scar that would always be there, reminding me of everything he did. I spent nights lying awake, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again, wondering if I'd ever get the closure I so desperately wanted. But now, every time I think back to that sad little monkey face, I can't help but smile. It's funny, isn't it? How something so small, so petty, could bring me so much peace. That was my closure. That was my revenge. Not the screaming match I imagined in the beginning. Not the big confrontation or apology. No. It was knowing that every time he went to watch his favorite show, he was going to be greeted by that little monkey, that reminder of who he was and who I was not going to be anymore. Sometimes we think we need big, dramatic moments to get closure. We think we need to fight back, to scream, to show them how much they hurt us. But sometimes the sweetest revenge is the one that's quiet. The one that leaves them wondering why the hell they ever crossed you in the first place. So tell me, if it were you, what would you have done? Would you have just blocked him and moved on, or would you have gone even further? Maybe you have a story of your own, something petty, something clever that gave you the satisfaction you needed. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm curious to hear what you'd do in my shoes. And if you want more real stories like this, full of twists, laughs, and maybe a little bit of petty revenge, hit subscribe. Trust me, the next one is even wilder. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is just a sad little monkey.